During today's episode, we take a look at the beauty of the local church on the mission field.
So I'm Nycki Heisler, and I'm a missionary in the Czech Republic. I just had the privilege of speaking with Brandon about the beauty of the local church on mission. We had such a great conversation about what does it mean to live the Great Commission, why does the Great Commission matter, how does the local church play into that, and how does our story as missionaries help us learn about that.
You know, if our gospel is good enough for the people overseas but not good enough for the person in the backyard, then we as Christians are missing the point of the gospel.
We had some great examples, some great stories. I hope that you'll love hearing them and that you'll just be really inspired to follow Christ in his command to go into all nations and make disciples and baptize them, teach them to obey all Christ that commanded. Just have this opportunity to grow and learn more about our Lord and Savior and his passion for all the nations.
So please stay tuned.
Hey everybody, if you are listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too, right? Well, guess what? On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one space for free, and you don't even need a premium account. That's awesome. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you are listening to right now. You see, on Spotify, you can do several things. You can follow your favorite podcasts so you will never miss an episode. You can even download episodes and listen to them offline, wherever you are. Easily share what you're listening to with your friends and family via Spotify's integration with social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and even Snapchat. Just search for The Ear Podcast on the Spotify app or browse podcast in the Your Library tab and follow me so you will never miss another episode of The Ear. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to app for podcasting.
The Ear, Evangelical and Reformed Christian Podcast. Welcome to The Ear, the Evangelical and Reformed, a Christian podcast that urges you to think deeper and draws you closer to God through faith. Through powerful sermons, teaching segments, and discussions, The Ear hopes to give you a different perspective on secular topics from a Christian worldview. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Please welcome your host, Brandon Queen.
Hello, podcast world, and welcome to yet another episode of The Ear. And today, I am very happy to introduce to you Miss Nycki Heisler, and we will be talking about the beauty of the local church on the mission field. So, hey, Miss Nycki, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Hi, Brandon. Well, thank you very much for having me on your podcast today. Let's see. Well, so I am a missionary in the Czech Republic. I am an ordained minister in the Evangelical Presbyterian Church. So officially, in legalese, I'm evangelist serving outside the bounds of our local presbytery.
Nice. How long have you been doing missions?
We have been on the field since October of 2015.
Oh, wow. So you're pretty much new in the game. All right. Well, not that new, but you're new.
Yes.
All right. And is your family enjoying it?
Yes, we really are. It's been an interesting adventure. When we moved here, I didn't expect to keep both of my adult children over here, and yet God worked a miracle, and they're both here with us. So that's a really cool plus side that we're enjoying. Awesome.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive on into these questions. Okay. So these questions are geared to you and your personal mission field and stuff like that. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the first question is, what do you mean, or what does the mission mean to you?
For me, it really is just about obeying God. And my husband took a short-term trip here in 2011. And when he came home, I saw that God had changed him. I was actually in seminary studying to be a suburban megachurch associate pastor. That was my vision. But when he came back, I just saw that God had a different plan for us, and that it was going to be serving him here in the Czech Republic. And,
Nice.
There was a long journey of how he affirmed that call for each of us individually. But for me, the mission, wherever you are, is just obey God. What he puts in front of you to do it.
Amen.
And for us, that was pack up, give up everything stateside, hop over the pond and be here in the Czech Republic. But for every single person, I believe you have a mission. If you are a follower of Christ, you have a mission, and God has put it in front of you, and your job is to just obey him and follow him in that.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So you're basically doing the Great Commission. All right. So what is the Great Commission to you and your family?
It was funny because it's one of those passages that before you become a missionary, it exists. But when you are called into mission, suddenly it becomes a passage you meditate upon. And sadly, I should have meditated upon it sooner. I wish I had meditated on it longer in my life. But as we prepared to come to the field, I really grabbed those 3 keywords: make, baptize, teach. And I wrote them out. I thought about them. We had them on our wall. But the thing that struck me the most as I studied it was that last commandment, that we are to teach them to obey everything that Christ commanded. And that was fascinating to me, because I realized that is, if you want to write a discipleship curriculum, that's it. A discipleship curriculum is teach them to obey everything Christ has commanded. And the fascinating thing is I have looked far and wide, and I have been unable to find a discipleship curriculum that is based upon what Christ commanded.
I like it. I like it. Okay. So why missions, Nycki? Why did you stay, or why are you continuing your journey on missions?
I think that it is a few things. One, when you get out of your own culture, you gain a whole new perspective on every part of your own life. Everything we do, like, there's so much of who you are that I'm an American, but you think it's I'm a human. And it's not until you get out of America that you realize, oh, this is being an American, it's not being a human. And we also get then in this culture to speak to them and say, that's being Czech, it's not being human. And so we get like, you suddenly get to a new perspective of what is actually common to us as human beings and what is different to us as cultures. And you just start to realize how much of your own identity is created by the place you're born, the people you hang around with, the world you live in.
Wow. Powerful, powerful. Okay. So what does the Great Commission mean to the missionary? And I kind of asked this question already. And I also asked this question to Stephen Woodworth when I interviewed him. What does the Great Commission mean to the missionary?
I would say on the broad scheme, the Great Commission for the missionary, these are our marching orders. If you want to know, when you get out of bed, what do I need to be doing today? I need to be doing something that's going to make disciples. I need to be doing something that leads to baptism. I need to be teaching them to obey what Christ commanded. And I would say for me, that's part of how I'm measuring my success or failure. A lot of days it's failure. But, that to me, the Great Commission, those are the marching orders and those are the measuring stick to say, how am I meeting those marks? If we're not seeing baptisms, we're missing something in what we're doing. If we're not seeing people learning to obey Christ, we're missing something in what we're doing. And ideally, it's a cycle, because we make a disciple, they get baptized, we teach them to obey what Christ commanded, and eventually they get to that last command, which is to make disciples. And so hopefully it creates a cycle of disciples making disciples as we work through that process.
I like it. I like it. Now this one's you're probably thinking about it. Who is a missionary?
Anyone who is actually following Christ is a missionary. But I think there is a really unique part of being in missions. Christ didn't say, go therefore into your own neighborhood and make disciples. He did say into all the nations. And there is some aspect of it where we have to get out of our own culture. We don't necessarily have to leave our country. We don't necessarily have to move to a new city, but we need to look at outside our culture. So one place I practiced it before we came to the field was I joined a parkour gym. And parkour has its own unique culture that is completely different than me. It's mostly 20-ish guys with a few women here and there, and a lot of kids. And so they're talking video games. They're talking fantasy. They're talking language that I did not know. And so part of my job as a missionary is to engage that culture and to learn from them about their culture, and then to learn how do I connect the gospel to this culture so that it's spoken in a language they can understand. Language isn't just national language, but even within every city, there are subcultures of language occurring. So parkour, that group has their own language that you have to learn to speak if you're going to be able to bring the gospel into their culture.
Wow, that's powerful. All right. So basically you're saying that I'm in Louisiana, okay, in the southern parts of the country. You're telling me that I'm considered a missionary.
Absolutely, 100%. I don't see any way that we obey Christ without becoming a missionary.
Wow, that is a very interesting point. I like that. So just by, like, for example, if you will, correct me if I'm wrong. So I do a lot with my church. I'm on session. I'm an elder. And if you're not Presbyterian, that means, let me dumb it down a little bit. You are the administrative part of the church. Okay. So, and I have this podcast, and my purpose to this podcast is to teach people and help them grow in their faith by having these types of discussions, and by, giving a topic that everybody wants to hear, but sometimes afraid to talk about. Is that a form of mission?
I think it is, especially because your podcast is going to reach outside, hopefully, of your local community. And you're going to have to learn how to broaden your vocabulary, how to broaden the way you speak, how to speak in a language that specifically reaches your audience, especially as it broadens. But I also think that I know your involvement with Revelation 7:9, which you can explain what that is for people who don't know. Like, that is, you're definitely hitting a cross-culture section there where you're stepping outside of your culture and you're speaking, trying to educate people on a new language of inclusiveness, of seeing one another as human instead of as race or color or culture. So I see that especially as a place where you are working in mission.
Perfect. So what makes mission so important? Why is mission so important?
Well, one, it was the last thing Jesus told us to do, which, when you're at the end of, when you have your last words, they're always going to be the most important words. They're the thing you want to make sure people don't forget. So it tells me it's really important to Jesus. And with those last words, he also promised us. So the Great Commission doesn't just end with teaching them to obey, but he says, and I will be with you until the end of the age. And so there is this sense that as we obey him in this command, we have some additional expression of his presence in a more powerful way. And I think you just experience Christ when you move to the front lines. You experience Christ in a different way than you did when you were kind of hanging in the background watching other people fight the battle. You just need him in a new way. And so I think part of it is, man, you're going to experience Jesus in a new way. I know I have experienced God. I've experienced the enemy in new ways, but I've experienced God in amazing new ways since we started obeying him in a life of missions. But secondly, it's important. Romans 10:14-15. I'm going to give you the Nycki Lynn translation, the NLT, is, how can they know if they haven't heard, and how can they hear if someone doesn't come? That whole passage there just really, to me, grabs the importance of mission is, man, we found the thing. We found the way. We found the truth. We found the life. And how do we not share that with people? And, I just remember when I got my first Kindle, I remember I would take it to everybody, like, look at this thing. It's like I have all my books and my back is not hurting and it's amazing. And I have this. And I was so excited just to tell everyone, like, I found the way to carry an entire library with me all the time.